I said it to one person and they were like, Brother Ali, do you really have an argument with your wife? I was like, of course I have an argument with my wife. What do you think I am? Like Mufti men do you think we don't have arguments with our wives?
I learned about responsibility when I got married. That's just me being totally honest with you. When you get married, as a man, you realize, wow, there's a dependency. There's someone I have to look after now.
That didn't just affect women. That affected the men as well. Men grew up in those households as well. And men were witness to that abuse as well.
I can't, that's not, because I totally understand, because it's just like being with a little boy, like a kid.
Welcome back to Sister to Sister.
So I'm Aysha.
And I'm Ameenah.
Podcast created for sisters with sisters in mind.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode of Sister to Sister with myself, Aysha Mercedes.
And me, Ameenah Mikhail.
Gosh, we have already filmed our new episode and it is, honestly, it's just one of those conversations that you're not going to want to miss, that you're going to want to get the whole family around and you're going to want to tune in and watch this episode. We're talking about gender roles, we're talking about feminism, we're talking about misogyny, we're talking about femininity, masculinity, and all of these juicy subjects.
It was kind of an overdue conversation, wasn't it? Yeah. We needed to have this conversation, especially because, you know, there's been so much on YouTube and on social media talking about this subject with gender roles and, you know, high value men and high value women and all these terms that we don't really need to have because you just need to just do them. Rather than be telling yourself I'm a high value woman or I'm a high value man, just be that and done. But we had the conversation and you're about to have a look at that. Do dive in and then dive in the comments.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies. Thanks for coming back to Sister. So, as you can see, we have here Mr. Ali Dawah, that's involved in Dawah Works, and Shuaib, aka Sunnah Guy. Guys, would you like to introduce yourselves? Just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shuaib, and I'm a father of two. Been married for, alhamdulillah, about 7 years, and I've been active and involved in Dawah past 12 years, just mainly with my local community, kind of focus on youngsters and young people and Dawah to young people especially. Thank you for inviting me.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Same thing as Shuhaib, not married for 7 years, mashallah, inshallah, and more. Same thing, what he said, 10 years Dawah, 2 kids same, and married for a couple of years.
Mashallah, Mubarak. Married for a couple of years. It's good to hear and good to see that the marriages are everlasting in some instances, and we're gonna delve into a lot more about that today.
Yeah, Jazakallah khairan for joining us, guys. Hopefully, inshallah, this is going to be a fruitful conversation. As always, we like to have insightful conversations here with stuff that will inshallah benefit our viewers.
Absolutely. So, okay, and guys, you can jump in, whoever wants to go first. We're looking at, first of all, we're going to have a little look at the gender roles, and not just the gender roles generally, but what are the gender roles within the Muslim family setup?
So I personally am of the opinion that Islam encourages gender roles, and it encourages us to basically adhere by certain kind of guidelines where it comes to what a man's responsibility is and what a woman's responsibility is. And I feel over the years we have drifted away from that. But I feel to kind of have a conducive, working and established home, there have to be defined roles. Yes, it may be taboo. Yes, it may be kind of uncomfortable for certain people. But the reality is that the man is, generally speaking, the breadwinner, and the woman is the one that takes care of the home, looks after the children, etc. And I feel that when we embrace these roles with no hesitation, with little resistance, I believe and I feel that that is when we can live harmoniously as a couple, and that's how couples can move forward together as a collective unit, rather than having each other, lock heads with each other and having problems. Because sometimes what ends up happening is that when you basically say, let's say, for example, I'm just going to be very, very open and blunt, right? if, let's say, for example, you say to your wife, you know, I want food when I come home, for example. Nowadays, unfortunately, that is seen as, you know, what, you know, he's demanding, he's this, you got to look after yourself, sis. You know, we've become a very self-centered generation, unfortunately. We've become very, very self-centered, where it's about the individual, and the world is imploring you and is pushing you to do that, because commercially that's what works for them. But subhanAllah, obedience to your husband when he wants food, for example, when you're supposed to look after the children, these sort of things, these are encouraged and recognized by Islam. So I personally believe that, you know, for us to be a kind of good, solid family unit, I believe that gender roles are encouraged and they should be embraced.
Yeah, I mean, when you say that, what are we actually talking about here? Because there's going to be people that are watching that are going to just hear that one statement, you know, for example, you know, I just expect food when I come home. And, you know, maybe for a woman that's listening, it may feel a bit like, but you're not doing this, 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 and this. So what are we talking about when we're actually saying, what are these gender roles, and which part should a man play and which part should a woman play?
When it comes to a man not doing this, at the end of the day, let's look at the simple responsibilities, the framework of Islam. Man's responsibility is to provide, number one. Number two, a man's responsibility is to obviously, you know, house, clothe, all these sort of things. And then at the same time, to be just, to be fair, to be kind, and to be merciful. You know, when it comes to other responsibilities, everything else can be compromised according to the Sharia. According to the Sharia, right? You have to sometimes, I sometimes wonder, Prophet ﷺ had 9 wives at one point. The way women have defined it today, that you're not giving me this, you're not giving me that, you're not this, that. And then the Prophet ﷺ, how was he leading an army, praying tahajjud 4 or 5 hours at night time, you know, fasting throughout the day, you know, answering people's questions? How was he then able to give them? And the reality is that the men weren't as involved, like inside, like with their wives all the time, just in their pocket, just with them, like, you know, oh, you need help? Oh, I'm there, babe, don't worry about it. You know, yeah, let's talk for 3 hours. Was that really the case? You know? And the thing is that I believe there's a Western narrative that's pushing basically to make men a little bit more feminine, a little bit more soft, a little bit more, way too much, and that way, where basically now the expectation of women becomes, oh, he's not doing, if he's not emotionally supporting me in whatever capacity, he's a deadbeat man, he's bad, he's this, he's that. So, is he providing for you? Is he taking care of the home? Is he kind, just, and merciful to you? If he ticks those boxes, then the opposite must be done as well, which is, for example, obedience. You must keep his secrets. You must only keep the friends that he decides. And ultimately speaking, that includes making his food.
Ali, I know you've got a lot to say on this subject. And we obviously heard you last time. You've got quite strong views on this one. So let's hear them. Yeah,
well, I think that's the reason why I've decided to pick the Neon Lights Bitter Truth. I actually picked them on purpose. I was waiting a whole month for them to come, actually. And I think it's really important for us to understand that traditional men want traditional women. But what we see sometimes, not all the times, of course, is that women want traditional men, but they don't want to be traditional women. So they want the perks of the both. They want to live the best of both worlds. So as a man, like Shoaib said, which I understand, like in my household, I pay the rent. I pay for the shopping. I pay for the gas bill, electricity. I give my wife an allowance, whatever I can afford. The things that she needs, basic necessity, clothing. These are things that I do. And when I mention this, I don't mention it in a way where I'm like, oh, I get to do this. No, I'm like, I love doing this. Is it hard? Yes, providing is hard. What if I lose my job, or for example, I can't provide? That's scary for a man. In 2 ways, it's scary for a man. Number one, I can't provide. Number two, it can affect, like, masculinity. I think is tied to that more than, hey, I've got big biceps. Oh, look how big my shoulders are. Oh, when I come home and I bang the door and I threaten my wife, I don't think it's masculinity. I think it is, when we look at the Sunnah, that there are certain things. If I'm a traditional man and you want a traditional man, and every woman wants a traditional man, every man has a basic right to want a traditional woman. But what we sometimes see is that women want a traditional man, but when it comes to being a traditional woman, they're not performing. So when they're not performing, then it's like, Well, what do? So when it comes to, we both, the husband and the wife, have a common goal, which is nurturing the future generation. But we don't think like that. We are too busy about what holidays we're going to go, what car we're driving, what clothing we wear, what people on social media are going to think about us. Let's make this beautiful image of our marriage, which is fake, and it's a big fat lie. Because all of us know that in marriages there is arguments. I get into arguments. We have little fights. These are normal. Some people come. I said it to one person, and they were like, "Brother Ali, do you really have an argument with your wife?" I was like, "Of course I have an argument with her. What do you think I am? Like Mufti Menk and all this. Do you think we don't have arguments with our wives? Do you not think sometimes we upset our wives or our wives upset us? This is normal, bro. I don't know what kind of image you got in your head. And this is the problem we're facing. A false image in our heads. And this goes with both the brothers and the sisters. When it comes to brothers, our weakness is the opposite gender. So the things we expect and look for is blurred. So we look for the wrong things and we suffer at the end of that. Same with our sisters. They have this false expectation of a Hollywood, Bollywood movie. Marriage doesn't work like that. Like Brother Shuhaib said, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had 9 wives. So is it the norm that, your argument's sake, your husband has to spend this amount of time with you every single day? No, there should be dedicated times. I have dedicated times for my wife where I go, this is your day. What would you like to do? Whatever you want to do. You know what I'm saying? So I do that. And even though my wife tells me, you know what? She loves me planning the day. Today we're going to go and do this. After this, we're going to go and do that. She's like, I like the fact that you can plan for me, because a woman looks for a leader. She looks for somebody that's going to guide her. This doesn't mean if I say we're going to do A and then B, and she goes, instead of doing that, can we do this? I'll go, yeah, actually, why not? I'm not going to do it. No, I'm the leader. How dare you? Let me discipline you with my stick now. It doesn't work like that. So I think it's a fine balance, but it's just traditional men want traditional women.
Yeah, I think I agree with what both of you said. A lot of what both of you said. And mashallah, Allahumma barak, may Allah just continue to put barakah in both of your marriages, because what we're seeing now in this time, unfortunately, is a lot of divorce happening. And I think it takes for us to start to ask these questions and have these conversations about, and to find out what is the root of what of these, what are the causes of these divorces. And I think you hit the nail on the head, especially in terms of talking about expectations, unrealistic expectations. But Ali, with the bit of truth, I think I also have to put in there, that some men are not performing the way that you, yourself, and Brother Shuaib are performing.
And that's the bitter truth.
That is the truth. So what would you say needs to change in regards to brothers also pulling in from their end? Because I think you're right. When it comes to women want a traditional man. They do. I remember actually yesterday I was looking at I was watching something, and then a quote came up from, I don't know if it's Jordan Peterson. I may have that wrong, but anyway. But it was said that a good man is a dangerous man, meaning that it's somebody who voluntarily, chooses not to use their power and exercise their power.
Jordan Peterson, yeah.
Yeah. And what I took from that was that it's true. A good man is somebody who understands that they can exert their power in a certain situation, but they choose not to, because they know that it's not going to help. It's not going to better the situation. They choose to use, characteristics that obviously the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam exemplified, patience, honor, justice. They choose to use these characteristics, and they have that balance. But from where we're sitting as women, we know that a lot of sisters don't get that. They don't receive that in their marriages. So what would you say to these brothers who are not performing how they should be performing in their marriages?
I'd say, without a shadow of a doubt, whenever kind of advice is given, it's given both ways. It's not just the fact that women need to kind of fix up and correct themselves. The reality is that a lot of brothers need to as well. I'll be honest with you. I learned about responsibility when I got married. That's just me being totally honest with you. When you get married, as a man, you realize, wow, there's a dependency. There's someone I have to look after now. And the faster a man matures, the better for him. The reality is, if you're not making money, if you're not, if you're just chatting all the time and just like, you know, just like being too loud, and if you're like not bringing in money, and if you're not holding your own honor and respect, the reality is that why should a woman respect you? What merit do you have for her to respect you? And that's the problem as well that we're facing. You know, one of my friends, when he got married, he talks a lot. Like, and I'm telling you, and he's the type of guy that in a fit class, he'd be like, can you do wudu on the moon? Like, he's just one of them guys, isn't it? Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I said to him, I was like, bro, one advice I'd give you is just try not talk too much, as in, like, just try and be composed. Don't be stupid in front of your wife. Don't be a clown. Yeah. Don't be busting jokes all the time, every single day, right? And also, he wasn't making too much money at the time as well. And so also, bro, you got to pattern up in that sense as well. You got to really fix up and, you know, and sort yourself out. And the reason I said that to him is because I know him. But there's certain other brothers who are well established and are good and mature that can, you know, take care of themselves and take care of another person as well. And alhamdulillah, that's good. You know, you can't paint everybody with the same brush. And I was that person who, I didn't have much money in the beginning, and subhanAllah, marriage kind of allowed me to grow financially. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, from that perspective, definitely, I feel there are brothers who lack and brothers who need help, and brothers who definitely should be advised in that way, and should take more importantly, take their responsibility seriously. Yeah. You know, I think that's what it comes down to.
I think it's very interesting, if I can add on, is that I'll be honest, if a sister came to me and said, Brother Ali, I married this brother, and he's coming to me, I'm going to marry him, and he's talking about stuff like, you know, obviously rent prices are high in London, etc. I would want you to pay for 50% rent, or contribute towards the rent or shopping. I'll tell that sister, don't marry that guy. Straight up, I'll say, look, is he practicing? Okay, if he's got taqwa and he's a good brother and he's got good adab, good akhlaq, I would say, you know what? Okay, I would not say don't marry him, because if he's got that, but if he hasn't got that, I'll say stay the hell away from this brother. Why? Because at the end of the day, we need to, the way we can fix our brothers is by sticking on them. And in my future episodes, this is the reason why I did this whole setup, the bitter truth. You know, I'll be doing videos where I'll be telling people, brothers specifically, and sisters as well, that you do not need to pay for rent. I'm so sorry. You do not need to pay for rent, for shopping. He has to provide, period. Now, what this would do would cause ripple effect, because as public figures like Shoaib, myself, Mohammed Hijab, whoever it may be, that we have to push this so our brothers can understand. Because I've seen brothers come and say to me, you know what, Brother Ali, that video that you done where you're working out or you're going to the gym, it motivated me to go and work. I was thinking, that's interesting. I didn't know it affects that many people, young men. He's like, I was feeling a bit lazy, I left. I thought, if that's the case, if I can push the narrative where I'm like, you are the maintainer and protector, you have to do that, and we stick it on you, I'm sure it's going to have some kind of an impact on you to change the way you think. Now, that's well and good. Here's where it gets a bit controversial. Another bit of truth for you guys, yeah? For the people that are watching. Men are ready to take that responsibility. But when it comes, we can stick it to our brothers and be like, brother, you're the maintainer protector. He won't cry about it. He'll be like, you know what? True, I will. But the moment we go to our sisters and say, traditional woman, how dare you? What are you trying to say? It's like, you know, sister, if your husband says to you, he would not like you to have so-and-so friends. Or for example, I'm going to go holiday with my friends. No, you're not. I would not. I do not approve of you going. You insecure man. You Where'd you get these terminologies from? I'm insecure because I don't want my wife going on holiday. Not that I don't trust my wife. And I'm not just talking about myself. Many brothers, yeah? Is because you might go to a specific land, anything can happen. Okay. And not only that, there might be some idiots who are going to try it with you. Why would that's my protective jealousy. But what are we labeled? You're insecure. You're like this. You're like that. And then you're thinking, well, hold on a second. I'm the traditional man that you want. But when I want you to be the traditional woman, all hell breaks loose. So from a sister's point of view, you guys tell us, I see men, when I give advice, wallahi, I've seen this from the day I started YouTube. I would do a video advising brothers. I would go in on them. Some of them will come and accuse me of saying, you just want to get in the good books of the sisters and you want to get married. I said, yeah, okay, brother, I'm doing all this to get married. Okay. Anyways, the moment I do one video advising a sister, all hell break loose. You misogynistic man. You this, you're that. Well, sister, look, I've got 7 videos about brothers. I don't care. So that is what we're seeing.
I think we've got 2 very different things here, because obviously you have visible evidence of sisters coming in the comments and, you know, making their voices heard, whether it's in a positive or a negative manner. But what we're talking about is from the perspective of hearing real life stories from people, because comments on social media is one thing, but actually hearing real life stories
and knowing sisters who are going through situations that have turned out like this, and brothers will, admit and say, oh yeah, I need to fix up. Everybody does that. But do they actually take action to change and make the necessary changes that they're supposed to make? And from our perspective, having these conversations with sisters in real life, online as well, that's not necessarily the case. So, we have to think about it in a real aspect, because everything that we're saying is happening all at once. And you're not necessarily getting individual situations where a good brother is doing all of what he's supposed to do, and a sister is just taking the mick and not doing what she's supposed to do, or a good sister is doing what she's supposed to do and a brother is not. It's not as cut and dried as that. Everybody has to take accountability for their individual contribution to the situation, because everything's happening at once. Do you get what I mean? So
what would you define as a sister not doing what she's supposed to do?
So, like I said, I agree with what you said before about the gender roles and the position that we're supposed to play as women. Obedience to our husband. This is part of Quran and Sunnah. We're supposed to do this. The scenario that Ali, spoke about, of a sister going on holiday with her friends. SubhanAllah, your husband is your mahram. So if your husband says no, you have to take that on board. It's not really it shouldn't be an argument. Unfortunately, it is.
Do you know how many women watching this will be like, what? Obedience? And I can't go holiday with my friends? Are you mad? That's what they'll say to you.
Yeah, but you know how many men will be like this and be watching this and be like, it's true, and then still not change.
True. But the thing is, again, look what's happened here. And we've seen it with, and by the way, I know you guys don't do it in a malicious way, with yourself and sister Aysha as well. I believe sisters, sadly, let's not generalize. Look, my wife is a woman, my daughter's a woman, okay? My mother is a woman, okay? When we say these things, we want it for the betterment of the ummah. And that's the direction I'm going towards. The da'wah work I'm doing, I'm reducing it. I'm going into this whole gender roles, etc., because it's the biggest fitna that's hit in our household. And there's many brothers doing da'wah. If I'm not in the scene, I don't think it's going to have any impact. Alhamdulillah, there's beautiful brothers doing da'wah. And the reason I'm diving into this is because sometimes I feel like there is no accountability. Because when we say something, it's like, yeah, but because of, I'm like, but hold on a second. Can we take accountability as our sisters? Can we say, hold on a second. That there is correct. Now, what you said about, for example, men, you're right. A lot of men, I think the first step to change is acceptance. I am wrong here. Yes, I need to make a change. Is it true? Is it frustrating that men come and say, yes, I should, and they don't? Of course, it's very frustrating. And we agree with you guys and we stick it on the brothers. What we're seeing is, like what you said a minute ago about obedience and going out with your friends, is something that is a good step towards change. Because at the end of the day, you've mentioned some things. For a lot of sisters, that's very strange. The word obedience and the word I'm not allowed to go on holiday with my friends is weird. Like, what? So what we're seeing is, this is what we're facing today. It's good it comes from you, and we want it to come from you guys more, because when it comes from us, it's like, here we go, another misogynistic, typical man. So we want you sisters who are on the front line, who's doing this. That's the reason I joined this, because you know why? We need more sisters' voices like yourself, who are reasonable, who understand the role of the gender, and maybe giving a good assumption to our sisters. It might be that women tend to be more emotional. Men are sometimes, we tend to be more logical, straight thinking. And I'm not saying sisters cannot be, but what I'm saying is maybe in the comment section, those emotional things can come out. Why? It's also connected to what they went through, which I understand. They look at the father figure, dad beats up mum and does this and that. And now we've got a guy, be it Ali or be it Shuhaib. Now he wants to tell us, I understand. I know where it comes from most of the times when I speak to sisters. It's not that they don't agree. It's because of the things that they have seen where they're like, no, when you tell me about obedience, they're envisioning who? Dad who used to be up mum. I'm not going to be obedient to a man like that, but we're not talking about a man like that. So what we're saying is, we're not, that person you're talking about, clear your mind. We're not talking about it. Shuhaib is talking about a good brother, a decent brother who loves his wife, who sometimes every now and then buys flowers, treats her, looks after her, who's good to her. And then we're talking about these kind of sisters who are then rebellious to their husbands. You might say, Sister Ameenah said, why would any woman do that? I know of a situation of disloyalty from my hijabi to her husband. And I'm not saying the husband was perfect, because I looked into the scenario. They came to me. I stay away from marriage advice. Like, please don't get me involved. But they were very adamant. The brother, yes, he had his flaws. but nowhere near what he done from what I know, like speaking to both sides. And it was a matter of disloyalty. And I can't go into details. Out disloyalty. And this brother would be like, yes, she will go to work, I will look after the kids, and one day I found text messages. So we are seeing an increased amount of brothers suffering at the hands of their sisters, their wives. I know also the main culprits when it comes to domestic abuse can be men, but when we look at statistics, just to finish on this, that men and women are as violent as each other, by the way.
Yeah.
However, men use lethal force. They use more lethal force. So that's why when you look at women, they tend to commit suicide, but men end up taking their lives. Committing suicide and taking life are two separate things. You attempt, but men use more lethal force. So in a nutshell, that's what.
I think like these kind of discussions, as Ameenah was saying, are very important to have. And this is a sisters platform. Our main audience is sisters. And so obviously we have to put out what we hear from our sisters. We have to go on the information that is being brought to us from the women, because we don't have that much of an understanding of men. Just when it comes to masculinity, a lot of us have been brought up without male role models. So again, it's not necessarily like a lot of us women know what a masculine role model is, let alone how to be feminine. And for me, myself personally, I 100% take accountability in learning how to be feminine, learning how to be, we spoke about this last time, learning how to be the kind of woman that is in my feminine energy, as you say. But what that means things like obedience, listening to your husband, being able to take advice. And you're right, when people have gone through abuse, when people haven't had those role models growing up and it's not secure in them, then it does become quite difficult and people do get defensive. I've studied psychology to an extent, and these things are a fact. If you haven't had a secure upbringing, it does impact the way you behave in relationships. It's a fact. The correlation is there. So as Muslims, we have the Quran and Sunnah, we have the text, but we also have our own issues that we need to rectify. I'm sure, some of us here have been married before. Some of you have been married before, and you understand some of your mistakes, your individual mistakes that you made in that marriage. And you can also look and think, that person, my partner, also made those mistakes. However, I feel like it's very difficult for somebody to take accountability from the opposite sex, and it's kind of always been that way. So when the brothers do stand up and say to the sisters, oh, sisters, you need to do this, you need to do that, coming from a man, sometimes it is quite difficult to take that, and I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just trying to kind of get the viewpoint and the idea from the sister that it actually can be quite difficult for a sister to take that advice, especially if they're divorced single mother, they're by themselves, they're single, or they're around family members or around friends that have gone through difficult times in marriages. And it hasn't always got to be the extreme of abuse, of course not. But what we're seeing now, unfortunately, is a lot of broken homes, which is why we're kind of having these discussions, like, what can we do as women? What can we do as men to prevent these things from happening in going forward? How can we stop the breakdown of these marriages? And pointing fingers is helpful if we're doing it in the right way. Like you said, you've got this marriage series coming out where you want to teach, educate, and allow people to see what they can do in marriages or going into marriages.
I think what Ali mentioned just before, when he mentioned about women not being able to manage emotions, and being obviously out of the two, men and women, we tend to be the more emotional of our last creations, right? And I think there definitely is an issue in the Ummah, just in general, with women who are not able to manage their emotions. And contributing factors like what you mentioned of growing up without, a father figure, or growing up in an abusive household, or growing up in a household where you had a lack of connection with your parents, or your parents weren't necessarily in tune with you as emotionally as a child. But that didn't just affect women, that affected the men as well. Men grew up in those households as well, and men were witness to that abuse as well. And some of those things have affected the men just as much as they've affected the women. And I think this is why we're here, you know, talking about this right now. And all of what we've all said is valid, because it's the produce of all of that. It's the produce of people growing up without, you know, the right examples of how to actually be in a marriage. Yeah. And it doesn't count for everybody. It doesn't count for everybody. But I think there's so many nuances.
We're talking to the ones that do, aren't we?
Exactly. There's so many nuances when it comes to individual situations. So I don't think it's, you know, nothing's black and white. That's the only point I'm making, is that nothing's as simple as, right, this is the issue. I think it's important for everybody to really start to look, and instead of pointing the finger at the other person, really start to look individually at themselves, at what they're contributing to the problem.
I'd like to add something to that. And I think, you know, everything that has been spoken about, as you said, has its place, because you know what it is, when it comes to marriage, every single scenario is different. Every marriage is different. Every marriage has its nuances and its variable and its moving parts. And to come and give definitions and to start speaking objectively is very difficult. It's very difficult. Hence why I'd rather not say brothers are not doing this. I'd rather say, look, this is the Quran and Sunnah framework. Let's try and live within this. Because the reality is that there will be a scenario where a sister's been abused, or a sister hasn't grown up with a father, or a sister, and so we have, or a brother's been doing this, or a brother isn't doing that. Let's go back to what, you know, what we're supposed to go to the Quran and Sunnah as our primary reference, and look at that model there. That model there is of gender roles. That model there is of, you know, the man being the breadwinner, you know, and the woman being at home taking care, nurturing the family. If for example someone can't have children, or if someone is a single mother, or if someone has this problem, that doesn't take away from the fact what the framework is. The framework is a framework. You may not fit into that framework. That's fine, no problem. Do your best to basically embrace that. Don't antagonize against it. Don't resist it. Don't be like, no, this is not what this is, because I've been through this, I can't do this. No. Understand that this is the framework. This is the objective moral truth. What Allah and His Messenger have given us. If, for example, you've been through an abusive relationship, no father, if you had problems, if you had this, okay, no problem. Maybe my situation is a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that the framework is incorrect or inconsistent with what we're supposed to be doing as a collective. So therefore, that's my only message. My only message is very, very straightforward and simple, is that don't be antagonistic and give resistance to what Allah and His Messenger have told us to do. That's the most important thing. If you yourself have flaws, brothers and sisters, if you yourself have bad circumstances, or your circumstances have not been great throughout your life, that's fine. That's you. Do your best to correct yourself and work on yourself, but don't fight the narrative of Quran and Sunnah. Don't fight the narrative of traditional gender roles. Don't fight the narrative of a woman supposed to be a mother, a caregiver, someone who looks after the home. Don't fight the narrative that the man is supposed to be the breadwinner and should be obeyed. Don't fight that. Because that is an objective framework that Allah has given us, because He knows us better than we know ourselves. Maybe you may not fit into it. Maybe your situation is different. Everyone's circumstance is different. Don't worry about the circumstance. We're just speaking about from an objective perspective, and then maybe look at your circumstance differently and see how you can change yourself and better yourself.
This is why it's really important. Like, you know, what he touched upon, Shoaib, it's, if we look at the story of Iblis and Adam, there's a massive lesson to be learned. I genuinely believe it's the key to success. If we genuinely just observe where Iblis went wrong and where Adam alayhi salam made a mistake, but didn't totally, you know, end up, you know, being at total loss like Iblis by, you know, becoming a disbeliever. If you look at it, what did Adam alayhi salam, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam. What did Iblis do? When Allah told him to bow down to Adam, what did Iblis do? Arrogance. Did he refuse?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did he refuse? Because he said, he's better. Okay, where is that coming from? When he says, I am better, is there a text that he looked at and was like, okay, Allah has revealed to me? Where did that come from?
From his ego.
Okay, ego. So can we say he took his own opinions, his own logical thoughts, and be like, I am better than him. So this is very, very profound. And this is exactly what we're falling into with multiple things. Anything in the religion that you look where we're going wrong, it all ties back to this. It all goes back to this. We take the aql over the naql. The aql is our logic. And I'm not saying you can't use your logic. I think you need to use your logic. But you don't use it over the text. The naql is what Allah has told us, his revelation, what he has told us to do, wahi, etc. So at that point, when Allah's telling Iblis, bow down to Adam, Iblis is registering that and saying, well, hold on a second. This doesn't logically follow in my head. Instead of thinking, did Allah say this? Yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. Does it make no sense to me? No, but I'm going to do it. Instead of doing that, what does he do? He says, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to do that. Number one, I refuse to do that. Number two, when he refused to do that, what's he saying? He's saying, Allah, you are wrong. You are telling me to do something that is illogical to me. So what you can see is his misguidance. He didn't fall into kufr because he disobeyed Allah. Because if that's the case, didn't Adam disobey Allah?
Yeah.
Then why didn't he not fall into kufr? Allah told him, don't eat from the tree. So what's the difference? The difference is this. When Adam ate from the tree, he acknowledged his mistake and said, oh, Allah, forgive me. He didn't say, well, hold on a second. Logically, you knew, Allah, that I'm going to do this. So you punishing me. He could have made the same excuse as Iblis. What does Iblis say? He says, and because you misguided me, look at the logic. He is blaming who? Allah. And saying to Allah, you made a mistake. Why? Because logically something doesn't follow. Now, where is this connected to? We are doing the same thing. We look at something from the Quran and Sunnah, we go, A'udhu Billah. Some people will even say that's misogynistic. Surah Nisa, verse 34. Some feminists have said, Muslims apparently, rejecting the ayah. It all goes back to the story of Iblis. Something that doesn't make sense to you, you're like, no. And that's the reason why men are following today red pill. Because why? They are thinking, let me follow this. We have the Quran and Sunnah. Yeah, but what were you talking about? We have the Quran and Sunnah. The same with sisters, feminism. They are saying, okay, this logically makes sense to me. The Quran doesn't. I'm going to go with this rather than that. And you know what's happening? We are suffering. Men are suffering. Women are suffering. Let's follow feminism. It's not working. We have sisters, so many sisters now, females, forget Muslim women, in their 30s. They are after 30, they are less likely to, conceive. Yes, they are getting older. You need to understand their biological clock is ticking. It's not the same for a man. There's certain advantages. That's the reason why Allah has given certain power balances. A woman, when she's born, she's gifted with her beauty. She's wanted by men. That's gifted to her. So for a man, he has to work his way up. So there's a power balance Allah has given. But what I'm seeing is that we have sisters who are suffering with a career, following my career. A man doesn't care. Look, let me tell you something. When I met my wife, if my wife was a dustbin collector, I don't give a damn. It means nothing to me. Zero. If she was a multi-millionaire, it means zero to me. I don't care. I don't care what you earn. Actually, you know what? The more money you earn, the more it will jeopardize our marriage, because I want to be the maintainer and protector. Even if you're a millionaire, I will say, no, your money, that's yours. Enjoy it. Rent, bill, all the shopping, I'm paying for it. That is my duty. So what I'm saying is that if we look into the Quran and Sunnah, the model of that, we don't need red pill, we don't need feminism. And the problem is that we do not turn to it. We will go and find, unless some scientific profound study comes out and be like, this method of the Quran and Sunnah of gender roles is perfect, then Muslims will be like, oh, all right, let's turn to it now. When Allah and His Messenger says it, no. And this is the issue that we're facing. The root of the problem, which I like to go to, is this. The more we don't turn to the Quran and Sunnah, the more you're going to suffer at the hands of these women-made laws and men-made laws.
That's an amazing point, honestly. And that's kind of where we wanted to get to. We wanted to get to the point of red pill, blue pill, this movement, that movement, feminism, and all these kind of things. They're distractions. Yeah. They're taking us away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're all from shaitan.
Yes.
Because let's face it, it's causing rifts between the Muslims. It's causing rifts between husbands and wives, as you said. Because if you're a female following feminism, you can't be in your feminine role, and your feminine role is your status as a Muslim woman, as a wife, as a mother.
Yes.
You cannot follow that and be in that role. That is the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us women. And the same for man. If you're in a role where you're having a hatred, misogyny towards women, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his last sermon, what did he say?
Yes. Be good to your
Be
wife.
good to the women.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a complete contradictory. All of these kind of ideologies, if you want to call them that, are complete contradictions to our Quran and Sunnah. And there's, you know, the narrative at the moment that we're seeing that's being pushed by, you know, a lot of brothers and sisters is really, really damaging. And this is why this conversation is so important, because we need to learn our religion. You know, praying and just kind of understanding a little bit about it, you know, now is not really sufficient, because the more that you go into other ideologies, and the less that you start to go into learn knowledge about the deen, the less that you spend time trying to please Allah. Why? Because you don't know.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said as well, and Ali, it's true. That was an amazing point. And I think it's important for us to really look at our characteristics as individuals. And the best example that we have of character is the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And obviously the Sahaba, you know, the women of the Sahaba in particular, since we're talking to the sisters, you know, we need to really start looking at those women rather than, you know, the women on social media of today who are not necessarily giving us the correct examples to follow. You know, we can really start taking it back to the Quran and Sunnah, and taking it back to the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and just looking at those people as our examples for role models. And it's important, especially for those of us who have children, because we're passing this on to the next generation, and we'd rather this start to improve than it continue to get worse. Inshallah.
Yeah, and I think just like maybe we can talk about. I'm going to be having actually. I'm trying to incorporate the Bit the Truth model. I'm planning on incorporating where we invite sisters and brothers, and we have a live discussion there and there, like about topics, like for example, different topics, but like the Hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when it says when a man calls his wife to bed and she doesn't come, the angels curse her. I want to discuss these topics. I want to have a sister's point of view, a man's point of view, and there's so many more in the religion that we should discuss. I think this will really shape up the way we think, because if you look at that Hadith, even that Hadith is misunderstood, because it's like, oh my gosh, like we speak to non-Muslim women, like, oh my gosh, this Hadith says that if a woman doesn't sexually please her husband and she calls him and she's cursed. I was like, that's very interesting, because look at the way you're looking at it. Actually, if you look at the Hadith is saying what? Does it say to the man, go and force yourself on her? No, it doesn't. It says, okay, you called her, she didn't come. Okay, you've done your bit. Okay, now her punishment is in the divine sense. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So if you think about it, it can be that this woman is kind of maybe blackmailing her husband, like, no, I'm not going to give you. And that's the most weakest point for a man when it comes to intimacy. There's studies that show when it comes to intimacy, like when it comes to like, you know, those things, for a man, there is no comparison with a woman's. So he's at his weakest at that point, and he needs his wife there. And the same scenario, just so our sisters can understand, is like me and my wife walking down the road, and a man comes with a knife, and I take a step back and run away. How would my wife feel? I'm at my most vulnerable, and you just left me and went. And the man feels the same way when it comes to intimacy. I need
your masculinity, doesn't it?
Exactly. So what we're saying is, in that moment of weakness, I need to perform. I might end up dying. And at my weakness of here, because there's fitna, I come, like the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, when you go out and you might happen to see a fitna, run back to your wife. Imagine running back to your wife and saying, you know, and then your wife's like, no, sorry, I ain't got time for you. So this is just one element of it. But just to end on it, for example, sometimes me and my wife get into arguments. The reason I'm mentioning this specifically, which I don't need to, it's my personal life, is to drill into people's minds. Number one, yes, Ali and his wife gets into arguments. It's normal, it's marriage. Hello. Yeah, number one. And I'll be repeating this a lot, because people have this perception of, you know, it's amazing, you know, me and my wife, we wake up every morning and I throw roses in the air, you know. Sorry, and the reality is not like that. You know, we love each other, but there's moments where I've upset my wife. There's times where she's upset me. But you know what I realized? When I've upset her, if she responded with throwing a bottle in my head and I was like, woof, and then she's coming at me physically, I'm like, whoa, I need to defend myself. You know what I realized in my wife? May Allah bless her. And this is what I love about her, is anytime where I might be, I've done something wrong, I've upset her. And this is where her femininity is so strong, yeah? And when I'm talking about something wrong, I'm not talking about I went and sparked her in the face, or no. I'm talking about I might have said something may have been hurtful to her. Something, let's say, she was in a moment. But the way she responded, I later went and said, you know what? I'm sorry. But if she responded in a masculine way, I would talk her off. I'll be like,
Absolutely,
you put me off now. And that's the same, I think, opposite way. But what I'm saying is it's about how you deal with it. Her femininity, I'll be honest with you, my attraction to her increased. It was up there, it went up the roof, because I was like, wow, number one, look what kind of a woman she is. She was silent and just put up with a little thing, a mistake that I might have done, that might have hurt her. And on top of that, I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry. I acknowledged, I realized her reaction to what I've done changed my whole perception about her in a positive manner. So what I'm saying is to sisters, your femininity is your most strongest weapon that you have. A man loves seeing his wife feminine, want to be protected, want to be provided. These days, sisters are moving mad. I'm hearing stories of brothers getting uppercuts. I'm hearing stories of brothers getting glasses in their head. Yeah, and that's like, and these men are thinking, right, did I marry a man or a woman? Yeah, and there's just one element to it, but there's a lot.
just going to kind of say, to kind of wrap up, I 100% agree with you. It's so true, you know, for a female, and this is something for me personally that I'm actually learning on the job, you know, learning to be more feminine, learning to, you know, to correct myself. And this is what it means, as I was saying, you know, in the beginning, to take accountability. And we have actually done our previous podcast, so you can catch that on our channel, Healing and Accountability, because, you know, obviously the main thing that we need to be doing is turning back to Quran and Sunnah. This is without a doubt, you know, our foundation and our main objective in life. However, you know, just the same as physical health, we need to also look at our mental health and our emotional health as well. And like myself, I've been quite open and quite honest. I have been through things in my life that have shaped the way that I am now.
We all have. Same as me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I do feel like we need to be a lot more open to taking accountability, to becoming more self-aware, you know, not just on an individual basis, but stepping into marriages. Because if you're married to a brother or a sister that is using physical violence or is, you know, doing things that are outside of what is, you know, permitted in the Quran and Sunnah, you really need to check yourself. And that's the reality. And how do you check yourself with your emotional and your mental health? Things like, you know, self-help books, therapy, sitting down with an imam that has a psychology background, you know, understanding what your triggers are, understanding the kind of person that you are, and what is stopping you from stepping into your femininity as a female. What is stopping you from stepping into that masculine role and that providing, and, you know, what is it that's stopping you from reaching that goal, if you like? And if it is connected to, you know, emotional and mental health, then, you know, I think people just need to not be afraid to ask for help, because, you know, it improves relationships massively. You know, the more that you can get into your role, the more that you can relax in that space, the more that you're not holding back, or you're not becoming aggressive or angry or refusing to, you know, whatever it is in your marital setting, because that doesn't always just come from, you know, feminism. That can also come from inside the self.
Yeah, you know, maybe we can wrap up. But this, like I said, this topic is massive. There's so much, and I would invite you, sisters, as well, when I'm, inshallah, going to do what I told you guys to. It would be nice for you guys to come and have your say on it. I need to have sisters there. You know why? Because we need to have a dialogue, man. We need to, and I think this will fix these marital issues and many relationships. I think it will fix it. Let me ask you guys a question, Sister Ameenah and Sister Aysha. So, just the scenario that I gave you. If you had an argument with your husband, and let's suppose you said something to him, argument's sake, and he started crying. But I need you guys to be honest here. He started crying like he looked very feminine. Like you had an argument and he just started crying. How would you feel? I just want to understand. Would you find that, even if it's an argument, it's nothing to find attractive or not attractive, but if you saw him in a state where he's like, you know, he looks feminine and he's crying, how would that make you feel as a woman? Honestly, I need you guys to be honest here, please. Let's start with Sister Ameenah, maybe.
For me, first of all, I don't think it wouldn't not make me feel attracted to him. It would make me ask questions. It would make me ask, like, because it would, first of all, that would probably be a bit out of character.
Okay, why? Why is it out of character? Hold on a second. Why is it out of character? I'm looking at first impressions. You've had an argument. You said something not that deep, but he started acting feminine, start crying. What is the first impression like to you? I just want to know, what would it be?
Okay, but acting feminine and crying is not synonymous, is it?
No, I know. But that's why I said crying in a feminine way. Like a man can cry. Look, I've had times where I've cried. Yeah, like I've been through some certain stuff, etc. I cried to my Lord. But what I'm saying is, and it doesn't make you like less masculine or no, I don't believe that. But what I'm saying is, in a feminine way, like how would it make you feel as a woman? Because this is a guy like masculine protector, and then he's in front of you crumbled like in a feminine way.
Definitely make me ask questions, because I'd be asking like, what's going on with you? What's going on with you? What's happened? I'd actually have to have a conversation with you. And if at that point when we have the conversation, it doesn't seem like it was warranted, then I'd be asking myself some questions.
Okay, what if he says you hurt my feelings?
I'd have to acknowledge that, because what does that mean? Like, this is the thing. We've got to come past this, the idea that a man crying there's something wrong with that, because there is nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm not saying that. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying a man can't cry.
No, I know you're not saying that, I know. But for everybody else, I think.
Can I just answer? So for me, that's an absolute no. I can't. That's not. Because I totally understand, because it's just like being with a little boy, like a kid, you know. And so, you know, if you've just met somebody and you don't know them, or you're just getting into a marriage and they're saying you've hurt their feelings, so they're crying, I would have been.
You remember when I mentioned like about me and my wife having an argument? And she, you know, she's a feminine woman, alhamdulillah. And the way, like, to me, it made me more attractive to her. And, you know, I love, like, it made me love her more in so many senses. For a woman, I believe it's the same, because if you come to your husband, and women have their moments when they might say something they don't mean, you know, I know how your sisters can, you know, slice us brothers up into pieces with your words. But the thing is, it's like, imagine he starts crying in his feminine way. I'm not saying she cannot cry. Look, there might be moments a man can cry to his wife. I'm talking about specifically, the guy just breaks down like Sister Aisha's react. I believe what you said as well, Sister Ameenah said, that's very out of character, because to you that's going to be a bit unattractive, some sense, because you're going to be like, you know, you don't expect that. And that's the way we feel about our wives. We want that feminine side, and just the way you guys want that masculinity. When it, like, you don't want it to just end up bawling, crying just because of she said to you, don't do that again, or I don't know, why did you say that? You know,
I think that's unrealistic though, isn't it? Like,
I know, but what I'm saying is, it's about your nature, gender roles. Innately, there are certain things that you expect in a woman, in a man. It's your hypergamous nature. You have certain things that you want. You want a man that's taller than you, a bit stronger, a leader. These are certain traits that you are born with. We need to embrace that. And that's what I'm saying. In today's, we see men have become women and women have become men. And what I mean by that is you're dealing with someone who's emotionally, for some reason, I'm talking about perpetually, anything that you do, he just has this breakdown of crime. That's something. I'm not talking about a man who's a provider, protector. You know, once a guy tried to come in, he sparked him out. You know, he's a strong guy. He had his moment of crying. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about specifically marrying a man who's emotionally so feminine. That's going to make you unattractive.
I think even marry a man like that, I'll be honest with you.
Exactly.
Like,
well, that's my point.
That's why I said it would be out of character.
Exactly.
I think what Ali was kind of trying to say, to me, it seemed like it was an example of, you know, for example, like taking a kind of way of taking someone being out of their natural state and how it would be perceived by the other sex, like i.e. a man sitting there crying over nothing. You know, for a woman, that's not a man. That doesn't feel like a man. Yes. And then obviously, like, if you flip it and you see a woman acting aggressive, you know, I've been aggressive before. Yes, it's not good. It's not nice. Like,
exactly. But there's also questions to be asked. There's reasons behind that behavior, though, isn't there? There's reasons behind that behavior. So the same for a man. And that's why I said that the example, I get that I got the example, because the example is like, if you meet a woman and instantly she's like, yeah, I got a man, and she's acting like man then. Like, if you meet a man and he's just instantly like feminine, like it's just not. But the realistic example is you get married to somebody and then you know, life goes on, you have an argument, and then the woman starts acting like your man then. You want to start having a fight. That's the real situation we're talking about. Or in the example that you're giving, you're in the middle of an argument, something's happened, and then my man just starts crying. But that's the reason why I said I would ask questions, because I think there's questions to be asked. Just like on the other side with a woman, if you're carrying on like that, why are you carrying on like that? There's questions to be asked, like what's your behavior all about? What is it all about?
You want to dig deeper. Yeah, I understand. I'm just talking
I think that,
like, obviously digging deeper. Like if my wife one day start acting masculine, I'll be like, whoa, what's going on here? But I'm just talking in a level, in a surface basis. It's like
bad example, maybe, but maybe not the right example.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, maybe you guys think of a better one. But I'm just trying to, just understand that our roles, that simple things like this can have an impact on the way your partner perceives.
Of course, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, that this discussion has been fruitful, to say the least, and I feel that other people are going to benefit from it so much. And I think it's always good when we're having femininity, masculinity, gender role conversations, that we do have the viewpoint of the sisters and the viewpoint of the brothers. So thank you so much, Mel. Bless you.
Wow, that was a deep conversation, and we just felt like it was really important to bring some brothers that are on the dawah scene and that do come into contact with lots of the Muslim community. I mean, they are, two of the faces of the dawah scene, and they really do have that experience. And it was really good to be able to have an open conversation about, the family structure and why at the moment we're seeing in the Muslim community, why the divorce rate is so high, why families are splitting up. And we really hope that we have just started and touched the surface of this conversation to try and make some changes and to try and speak to the youth, speak to young people, and also the adults as well, about what we can do as individuals, as women and as men, to start to make these changes.
Yeah, that, because I think it's important to really, okay, we discuss the problem, we look at the problem, we blah, 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 all the finger pointing,
yes,
and all the blaming.
Yeah.
Eventually we need to come to some kind of resolution and implement solutions and have solution-based thinking rather than whose fault it is. Because this is, I think, with a lot of the narrative that's out there, it is, feminist, you're a feminist, and you're a misogynist, and da-da-da. And while these things, I'm not trying to negate these things are happening, because they are, but how do we stop it? How do we prevent it? How do we move forward? And alhamdulillah, I'm glad that we were able to have that conversation, like you said, with brothers, because a lot of the time these things, we're having these conversations amongst ourselves as the sisters, and the brothers the same. And again, it just comes to, because the brothers are like this, and the brothers are like that, and the sisters are like this, and the sisters are like that.
Don't you find, sorry to cut you, but don't you find when it's the sisters and the brothers, it does kind of get us versus them?
Yeah, it does. And
not intentionally, but I just feel that it's the conversation is not balanced
because everyone's emotional. And I think the thing is, you need to take the emotion out of it and look at it for what it is. It's not one person is in the wrong. Everybody is contributing to the problem. And this is what I think I was saying. And I think it's important, again, to come back to the conclusion that we did in the first place, which is looking at Quran and Sunnah. And some people might be like, well, you can't always just Quran and Sunnah it away. But no, we can, because we're Muslims. Because we're Muslims and we have the framework of the Quran and Sunnah for us to do it properly. So that, because when we get into these problems, we're trying to follow what we think and what this next narrative is telling us to do, and what this next group is telling, like Brother Ali said, you've got, the red pill movement, and then you've got the feminist movement. The influence of these things doesn't help. But what helps us and gets us back on the straight path is Quran and Sunnah, is what Allah has guided us to, what the Prophet ﷺ was teaching us, So this is why we have to have these conversations, because if anything, it's a reminder.
Absolutely. And that's what we aim to do, here on Sister to Sister, is just bring up certain subjects. We're not perfect, and we definitely, have our own, issues that we're dealing with in real life. So we don't want it to be a thing where we're kind of here just to preach. We're here to have conversations. We're here to talk about things that are affecting our communities. And we're also here to try and find these resolutions, to try and start to make these changes so that we can step forward. And, Brother Ali and Brother Shuaib, they, you know, very much so wanted to bring the issues of the brothers and look at some of the issues from the sisters. But it was really nice that they were able to look at what they can be doing, what they can change, you know, within their marital setting or within the community. And again, us as sisters, we need to look at ourselves. You know, we need to look at our history. We need to look at our upbringing. These things are necessary. Turning back to the Quran and Sunnah, absolutely what we're here for. You know, it's our purpose to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we also kind of do need to start taking steps in the direction of healing, looking at, you know, self-awareness and looking at what we can do to improve ourselves so that when we get into these settings, these relationship settings, you know, we are not causing that kind of generational trauma, if you like. And you know, we're starting to heal as families and then starting to heal as communities, inshallah.
Yeah, and, you know, changing the narrative, essentially. Changing the narrative that's, you know, put out there about, you know, us as sisters. You know, it irks me a little bit that brothers have this idea that sisters are like this, because, you know, while everybody will be like, oh, I don't mean to generalize, you kind of do. And we do it as well as sisters, you know. Oh, the brothers are like this, and, you know, it's sad. It's sad. We shouldn't have this opinion. We shouldn't have certain things happening, full stop, for us to think like that. But that's the point, innit? We need to be able to say, all right, it's not everyone. And actually, how can we change it? And just like Aysha just said just now, it is about going through that process of healing. But it's also about learning your deen, you know, because it's one thing to say we're Muslim, you know, and again, this goes for the two of us, that we're not perfect. We're not scholars out here. None of us are aliens. So, you know, it's learning our deen and refreshing the knowledge, refreshing, you know, our understanding about Allah and His attributes, refreshing our understanding about Tawheed, refreshing our understanding of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his story and the Sahaba that surrounded him, because the Sahaba and the Sahabiyat, they were basically reverts, converts. Reverts. But, you know, they were the first Muslims. They had to go through this, you know, moment of change, you know, shedding all those things from Jahiliyyah and learning new attributes and adopting that into their lifestyle.
Yeah. So we hope you did find this fruitful discussion beneficial, and please, please, please don't forget to click that subscribe button, and don't forget to like and leave a comment down below and tell us what you think. Assalamu alaikum. We out.
Assalamu alaikum.
That's all from us on another episode of Sister to Sister. We really appreciate all of the love, all of your messages and feedback. But until next time, be kind, as you never know what battle someone is facing.